Hi everybody, this is Josh Becerra from Augurian. I'm here with George Hadjiyanis. Thanks for being here, George.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
It's awesome. So George has been working in SaaS and software for a long time in the marketing field. We connected through your relationship with Authentic Brand. You've been doing some consulting as a CMO on their part, so you've got your consulting practice. But I'm really curious to dig into this experience you've had with software as a service. So why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself, some of the companies you've been a part of, and some of those experiences, and then I've got some questions for you.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks for having me,
Yeah.
first of all. So I've been in software as a service for 25 years or maybe more. I'm dating myself.
Yeah.
Really starting from the product marketing world and then moving into leadership and marketing and sales organizations for early stage companies that are coming into new markets that need to cross the chasm, to use a more term.
Yeah.
So organizations like Whamnet, which is back in the day was a digital provider of communications to be able to share large files in a secure way amongst industries.
Yeah.
Agility was a hosting company. I was VP marketing for them until they got acquired, and then moving into a number of other organizations until I went on my own about 15 years ago. When I started consulting, and then one of my clients hired me full-time to help start a new organization they were spinning out called InStratus, which was a cloud management provider.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of
cool.
Brings me up till after they got acquired, then it brings me up to today.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about InStratus, because when we were having the conversation prepping for this, it was really interesting that you kind of got in pretty early on that, and then you wrote it pretty much all the way through to acquisition, if I'm not mistaken. So can you talk a little bit about, that's every kind of SaaS marketer's dream, I guess, is you create some sort of a software, it really starts to gain traction, and then you get a big acquisition down the road. So in order to do that, obviously you gotta gain that traction, you gotta get those customers. So can you talk a little bit about, as in your role in marketing and sales, what it was that got you there?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, a great team. So I was consulting to a group that was doing software development. It's called Valtira, and they spun out this product called InStratus, which was a cloud management platform that they built for themselves. Okay. So it was built out of necessity for them to manage multiple clients in multiple clouds.
Yeah, scratch the itch, right?
Exactly.
You gotta scratch your own itch.
So really smart CTO there, and his name is George Reese, and he built this for our need. And then people started asking us, hey, can you help us as well? So we spun that out as a separate company. I joined full-time from inception through to Series A financing, and then acquisition by Dell, and then into Dell for a couple of years, which we can talk about.
Sure.
So for that, it was really a brand new market. It was really playing a thought leader strategy about, there is a problem where you are using multiple clouds and you don't know how much you're spending, you don't know if they're secure, you don't know how to automate them.
Yeah.
You need one layer in front of all those different cloud providers. So it was thought leadership through speaking at conferences. Twitter was just becoming a thing back then, and George Reese was really good at getting on Twitter, and we kind of enabled him to shake things up in the market and cause a little controversy.
Yeah.
And then writing white papers and doing webinars. A little bit of luck along the way. We had NASA read about us and called us, and we helped do the shuttle launch on Amazon streaming.
What's an inbound lead from NASA feel like? I can only imagine. Hey, we got a form fill.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know if this is for real.
That's exactly what happened. I was I went into the CEO. I'm like, we got somebody from NASA saying they're using Amazon to stream the last shuttle launch, and they want to do it in a secure, scalable way. And so we all just kind of looked at each other like, oh, this might be our moment. Yeah. So we got a hold of them, and I remember during a demo we were having an issue, and I was literally sweating. So, but it went well, and we used them as a client reference, and that helped us get to the next plateau before our financing. Yeah. And we also hired a couple of thought leaders in this space that were writers and speakers. Okay. That really then kind of permeated the market. So that was a smart move. Getting the right board members. And researching organizations that were using multiple clouds by looking at cloud providers' websites to see who is using clouds that may not even know they have the problem, and then getting in front of the CTO.
Did that kind of turn into account-based marketing kind of an approach then? You did that research and you're like, okay, here's our handful of clients that are like prospects that
Yeah,
we really want to
in parallel,
focus on?
and
Okay.
account-based marketing wasn't really a thing back then.
Sure.
Even though it was, it's just putting a name on it.
We didn't have a name for
Yeah,
it.
exactly. So we did that, but in parallel with kind of more, wider, marketing,
Awareness.
co-marketing with cloud providers as well, like Amazon, Rackspace at the time, VMware for private clouds. But yeah, exactly. So we kind of research who's using cloud, who's using Amazon first, and then hopefully they're using other cloud providers or even just multiple Amazon accounts, because that was a problem that they were having. So yeah, we definitely started prioritizing, and we hired a team and gave them target customers. We got some international clients like Korea Telecom that got us into other telecoms. So it was an exciting ride.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So I imagine that shifting from like this kind of startup culture to now you're acquired by Dell, and sounds like you stayed on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what kind of culture shifts, or what did you see? Like, did anything change, or did they really like provide a ton of autonomy, or like what were some of the differences? Maybe there were like tremendous benefits, like that influx of resources had to help, of course.
Yeah, it was definitely many roads traveled during those 3 years. But initially, it was really trying to understand where we could potentially partner with the different organizations. There was a services team, an integration team, a software team, a cloud team, government team. And so I had to work with those different organizations and understand how we could bundle our solution or co-sell. There was a lot of opportunity that was hardware focused.
Sure.
So we had to kind of prioritize, is this hardware sale also a cloud opportunity or not? And so we had to do some of that as well. And so there are a lot of chefs in the kitchen to try to figure that out. But great organization, and they brought us into organizations that we wouldn't have been able to get into because they already had them as a client or their name. And then there was also the marketing, like, do we change the name they changed the name to Dell Cloud Manager. At first we didn't really think that was the right way to go because of the brand that we had built, but it made sense for Dell because of their brand as well. So we had to navigate the name change, and there was some culture changes. Obviously a multi-billion-dollar company, with a 50-person company. They let us run autonomous for a while, and then it slowly got integrated into the rest of the organization. And then I got another opportunity and left.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I think, like I said earlier, like that path is like an amazing path. That's the kind of path that a lot of people who are in SaaS and marketing want to see for themselves. So it's cool that you've traveled that and you've been able to share a little bit of that with us today. So now, like, fast forward, you're in a place where you're doing a lot more consulting, and I think some of that is with smaller SaaS companies again. So I'm curious to get your point of view on, because you're relating to a number of different companies at like different sizes and stages, like, are there any sort of common pitfalls or challenges that you're seeing that you would think that this audience of marketers would be interested in understanding about SaaS marketing today and what you're seeing? I
think one thing is that everybody's in love with their own product to a point of fault, right? So they want to talk about their product and pitch their features and solution versus doing a more value-based, from a customer perspective. And I think that's one thing that I have seen across my customers. And it depends on who the leader is. If the leader of the organization is more coming from the sales world, engineering, or marketing, that'll be an issue more or less.
Right. Who is it more for?
Probably
the technical people.
If it's an engineer leading it, their heart is in that product that they built, and they want to talk about it as a product. So a lot of times I've had to flip the narrative within the company, which permeates through the sales team and the marketing, the web site and tools and stuff.
Can we dig into that? So I think as marketers, when we are showing up in organizations, this idea of trying to flip the narrative, that's not like you just was like, I just help them flip the narrative. Like, that is not an easy conversation to have, and it's not an easy outcome to achieve. So is there anything in there that you could speak to about how is it that you approach a more technical founder and talk to them about the importance of that narrative?
I think it's a good question. So first start with pulling it out from the people internally, like why did you build this solution? How does it benefit your clients? What are their alternatives?
Yeah.
So right now they're doing this and they're going to do this, and what's the benefit associated with using your solution?
Yeah.
And then hopefully they have a few clients that are open to talk and open up about the value that they're bringing. So you talk to some of the clients that are representative of the targets that they want to go after in their available market.
Yeah.
So pull the nuggets out of them and then start to layer that on top of the strategy, the go-to-market strategy. And hopefully, as you start to do that, they start to see that it's starting to resonate more with clients. Maybe they're getting more inbound activity or more customer reactions to their presentations or whatever, and they'll start to adopt that.
Yep. So the other thing that I think we talked a little bit about is this idea of like, if you go to someone technical and you say, hey, like we were going to take a scientific-based approach to this, right? There's actually like we want to test these things, right? We talked a little bit about message testing and trying to really understand what resonates with the market. And I know that you're a big believer in like this idea of testing.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about what your approach is, like, and how you know, like, okay, we've arrived at the message. We know that this is like resonating. Because I think sometimes marketers will be like, yeah, we're all about testing, and they'll test and test and test, but then it's like, how do we know when we've arrived, right? Like, how do you actually know that you don't need to sharpen the pencil much more and start maybe like focusing on that key message at that point?
Right. Yeah, and it's a path, and you might always be sharpening that pencil. But what I do is a lot of testing through tools like FreshDesk, or I don't know if you've heard of that one, but in terms of trying different messages to different target markets. So look at the target market you're going after. Get if you have like a paper or a webinar or some type of offer or something, then create different kind of do A/B testing around the subject line and the way that you message things and see what the different reaction is. That's one step, as well as one-to-one conversations with potential targets. So a lot of clients of mine introduce me to different targets that they have been talking to, so I can get a visual cues of what people are reacting to when we talk about different things, and change the message between different ones. So, and then also social media, testing things out on social media with different message types or offers or pricing or whatever the different changes are that you're looking at doing.
Yeah. So like with that FreshDesk or whatever, you're starting to like actually ingest data in a way that's like more predictive and showing you like, hey, like this is actually getting more click-throughs or more engagement, so that's when you're really feeling like, okay, we're honing in on this, we're arriving.
Yes.
Okay.
And then looking at the, depending on the size of the company, if it's a little bit bigger, looking at the close ratios and some of those things as you go through the month or year, or quarter or year. If you start to see some movement of pipeline growing and things like that, then you'll know that you're making progress. But it's a continual project, right? To continue to improve your messaging and your go-to-market strategies. So just you always have to keep your foot on that pedal.
I think it's interesting that you bring up kind of the qualitative side of things. I think right in this day and age, we've really leaned into like MarTech, and I'm going to ask you like some of the tools that you use, because I think it's cool and important, and I like MarTech. But I do feel like sometimes we lean so heavily on like tools and data sources, and to hear you say like you actually try to go out and have conversations with either prospects or existing customers and get their input on like that is an input for your message testing, I think is interesting. I think we sometimes lose sight of like how valuable that qualitative input can be.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sitting in your desk looking at numbers is good, but I think getting out and actually talking to people also gives you another layer to add on top of it to validate. So I agree with you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's talk about MarTech. You mentioned FreshDesk as a tool that you think is cool and that you've used to do some of this. Outside of just message testing generally, what kind of MarTech tools are you like playing with that you think are cool, or like these are my go-to tools? Do you have any ideas on that? Yeah,
there's various CRM systems for different needs. I think out of my clients, they all have different CRM systems.
Sure.
But Zoho has been a good one,
Yep.
as well as HubSpot, obviously, which is great for early stage companies, and they've really broadened their suite of tools to be marketing automation,
Yep.
not just email marketing and a CRM, and Salesforce.com but I would suggest that for larger organizations.
Yep.
Then there's a whole suite of account-based marketing tools that I'm just starting to get into, which is 6 Sense and Demandbase. I don't know if you've heard of those two, but those seem really interesting, and I'm really early, just doing some demos with the salespeople and looking at testing those out. But I think account-based marketing tools are something that I'd like to bring more into my client base.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so the question that I always ask everybody kind of at the end of these interviews is like, are there books you're reading, authors, or people like on a podcast that you're listening to that are kind of influencing your thinking, or that that you really are like leaning into in this day?
Yeah, there's one that it's old. It's like back, I think it's 2004. It's called Great Demo.
Okay.
And that one I bought 10 years ago for something. I was trying to figure out how to improve the demo at a client. And I'm working on a client right now that the demo process is not good. So they get on and they, show all the features and then say, what do you think? And I just thought about that book. So I pulled it back out, and there's some really good nuggets about first of all, understand the pain point of the client and demoing the pain point to that client, how we help solve that pain point versus going through every feature.
Sure.
And then also starting with the demo, the end of the demo, which basically says, here are the great results you'll get, and then backing up and showing how the pain point is solved along the way.
Yeah.
If they just read that one little chapter in that book, it's worth it. So that's a good book. And then the other one is The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Hurwitz, and it's a few years old too, but that's a good one.
Okay.
Talking about when you are working with an organization that's challenging, or a market that's challenging, or whatever. Yeah. That these are the types of hard things you have to do, and here is why they're hard, and here's what you should do. Like one of the chapters is about leading when you don't know where you're going, or something like that. And that's just where I'm at right now. And that really hit me. Like, sometimes you're stuck, everybody's looking at you for some guidance, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to go with my gut, and this is where I think you need to go. And so the book talks about that. So it's a really good book. And then podcasts, I love Guy Raz's How I Built This, which is similar to what you're doing here. So I think I've listened to all of them, but there's a couple of those that really stuck with me. One was the Stacy's Chips one. I don't know if you've heard that one.
I haven't heard that one, no.
It's, she just started selling, sandwiches or whatever, and then they had extra pita bread, and then so they started like frying it, and they just kind of gave it for free.
The chips,
And then she started realizing people were coming for the chips, not for the sandwiches. And she's like, I'm onto something. Yeah. Really interesting. And then the one around MailChimp was interesting, how they kind of did their path to where they were, and now they got acquired for millions of dollars. So that's a really, that podcast, every time there's a new one, I always listen to those. Yeah,
that's cool. I really like the Great Demo book that you're talking about. I mean, I haven't read it, but I do think one of the critical kind of meaningful actions that every software as a service wants someone to take, either it's like start a free trial or request a demo is basically like where you're at. And I do feel like there's probably a lot to be learned and honed in the actual demo process. Like if you can just improve that close rate of those demos, like you're gonna just totally crush, your sales goals, right?
Yes.
Because you don't necessarily have to like fill the top of the funnel. It's more like just like expand the funnel as people go through it, right?
Right. Yep.
So interesting. And then the hard thing about hard things, I'm gonna have to read that one because I feel like, as a leader, I actually love like leaning into the challenges that are presented, right? And while they are hard, they're like exciting in a way because it's like, man, if we can solve for this, it would be awesome, right? And so I do think that there's like, if you can acknowledge that things are hard, but it's okay that they're hard, and like if you can get energy from the hard things, I think that's a great thing as a leader.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Cool.
Those are good ones.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Appreciate
dropping some amazing knowledge bombs on us today.
No problem. Hopefully everybody got one little nugget. That'd be great.
Oh yeah, for sure. So thanks, George. We're going to say goodbye for now.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.